This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
17 and hitchhiked to California.
That's not called running. It's called being displaced, Joseph.
Well, you know.
Displaced.
You mean my old man was happy I was gone?
Hey, I had a friend and his dad had and everybody knew on your 18th birthday, they put up your chair and you were expected to be gone.
Well, you know, my rule at home when the kids was 18 and out. Either you're in college and out, or you're out. No matter what, you're not staying home. Today, kids are 30, 35 years old. I mean, they got this thing made.
They're back.
They did this thing on 60 Minutes. It showed in Italy where the young guys, 30, 35 years old, they had their own apartment, but they always went home to mom for the laundry and for food and everything. But they had the apartment in case they got a date.
But that was kind of old school. I mean, I had a lot of friends, and I was raised by my dad and grandma, so I was sort of adopted by all my friends' mothers.
Yeah.
I always took turns going to their different houses for Sunday for dinner and stuff. It was fun. My dad didn't do that, so they did that. Moms do that.
Moms do that. Your dads don't do that. We don't invite kids in for dinner. You got to be kidding.
But moms do that.
You
That's
throw
not
the
a bad
stuff on
thing.
the porch. Eat if you want.
No, Italian dads would do that.
You think? No. Italian dads have grandmas. They get the grandma to do it.
Well, my Sicilian godfather
Yeah.
would start cooking on Thursday for Sunday dinners. I mean, that was always. It was,
You know, don't you love Italians? So if it wasn't for Italian food, you know how skinny all of us would be here.
Hey, my dad was looking at cans of what he was going to make for Sunday dinner.
340-1590, 340-1590. Back in '04, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney, and Joe Martek, financial advisor, got together and started doing radio shows. And the concept was very simple, and it really hasn't changed. It was called each one of us had a different area of expertise, and each one of us could answer questions for people that the other one didn't know. And our buddy Greg, the attorney, we kind of had to drag him fighting and screaming in.
He was looking for a reason to join.
He was looking for a reason. We didn't give him much of a choice. But, speaking of the devil, lordy, we need to get another chair in here. And Harmony will leave that chair there for Greg and then grab another one for you and slide around the corner because we got a special guest here besides a special guest.
Who's that?
A special guest,
Harmony.
special guest.
Well,
No, I know Harmony's a special guest.
I know, but what happens is Alan is our semi-permanent special guest.
Like a groupie.
Who's
He's a
this other
groupie.
guy?
Harmony's, that's it. Alan's our groupie. Well, anyway, Greg, we were just talking about you. Greg Fasula, attorney.
In front of his back.
In front of your back.
That's never good.
And it wasn't a compliment, but it was not far from the truth. In fact, it was the truth. I said when we started doing
Slightly
a radio,
exaggerated.
well, hey, just call me President Trump, you know. Anyway, when we started doing the radio shows, it was called Dan and I wanted to do them. We got with you and said, Greg, we want to do the shows, and I think you said why.
I said why.
You said
He
why.
still says why.
He still says why. I think it's still called, how often do I have to show, Joe? And I said, well, Greg, not that often. Why? He goes, well, I just want to know when so I can put it on the calendar because if I block it out all the time, I'll never show.
But it does get in the way sometimes of other things that you got to do, and we try to be loyal to coming, but sometimes it does get in the way, like your trip got
My
in the
trip
way.
last
Some
week
of
with
us
my
do
brother
have to
doing
work.
our reminiscing
That's right.
trip, and our special guest member Alan Love, he decided to go visit Panama.
Did he?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it still there?
And I'd like to introduce my friend Harmony, who I'm happy you're here, Greg, because you can help Harmony out a little bit because Harmony lives in Minneapolis, and her congresswoman is Representative Omar.
Great.
Oh, aren't you lucky? You voted for her, huh?
She lives in Minneapolis on purpose?
Well, you like 40 below zero. That's all. What can I say?
I'm a snow girl.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, when I just was up to Michigan with my brother, we did have frost on the pumpkin one morning. Boy, I missed that. You know that, Greg? Having salt stains on my
do
shoes.
too. I'm heading up to North Georgia next week, so
It'll be cold.
Get a little fall, yeah.
But
it's about 40s, 50s.
Well, we went up as far as Cadillac, and we had some beautiful leaves. The leaves were changing. By now, they should be hitting by the time you go to Georgia.
Yeah.
But it was gorgeous.
Early November.
We had a great reminiscing tour, and we went back to our favorite places as kids. And I think we were talking about this early, Harmony, that our most vivid memories that are good are when we were kids, little kids, 10, 12, 11. Once we became teenagers, I think we blocked everything out except there were certain things that got in the way.
Certain things.
But
important things.
Yeah. Women?
Well, I'm not sure if they were women, right? What was Harmony it was an interesting thing you say that, because when I turned 30, it was my only traumatic birthday. Because when you're 16, anybody 30 is ready to die any second. Well, I played ice hockey as a kid because my birthday's in January. So I'm turning 30, and I'm kind of feeling old. And
a lot of head injuries, maybe?
Yeah.
Well,
when you get when that puck hits you between the eyes,
No, it's
we
getting
understand.
clear.
So anyway, I decided to start playing ice hockey, and the only kids that play ice hockey are not 16 yet. Because as soon as you can drive a car and you can take girls, you're done playing ice hockey. You're now. So anyway, all these kids are basically 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And when you're that age, if you can kill an adult legally, it's fun.
You might as well, yeah.
So, I mean, they just beat me black and blue. And I could hardly walk. But I played ice hockey with these kids every day for a couple weeks. And then finally one kid came to the door one day, knocked on the door. My wife goes to the door, and the kid says, "Mrs. Martek, can Joe come out and play?"
Oh, yeah.
I was young again. I was back. That was my last day playing hockey, by the way. But you might remember when we can reclaim our youth for a minute. Anyway, Alan, you saw the Panama Canal.
Yes, it's beautiful. They have the new locks now, and it's quite a wonderful experience. And they explain how everything is done, and you see everything. And it was just a wonderful experience to go through the canal. But we also went to Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Aruba, 5 ports in Mexico.
Wow.
And Harmony is bilingual, so she had...
she was your translator.
Well, she was...
Interpretate. Translators work with paper. I work with voice.
Man, I'll tell you, my Spanish, I've got a few words. Cerveza, por favor. And baño.
The important word.
You got to have the two, one flow
Baños,
with the
yes,
other.
yes.
The rest of the time it's point.
Now, when we went into the lake, Katoon, where you sort of like they hold you there.
Right.
Well, there was a hurricane going on, so we stayed there for a while. Well, my wife and I and some people went to this village that was supposed to be like how they lived 1,000 years ago. And I was a little skeptical because I didn't see all the things I should be seeing, I thought, if it was really a working village.
Especially when you saw the Disney logo.
Well, yes. So we get back into town, and we're waiting for the cruise ship to catch up with us. A bus stops. These people get off. I'm thinking, well, they look a little familiar. They go to the restroom. They put on their native costumes again. Set up shop outside, trying to get us before we left. So I was a little disheartened by what I saw, but it was a great trip. It reminded me of Cherokee Village in North Carolina.
Yeah, same concept.
Same
right?
concept.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you go to Hawaii, they get people and they put them in grass skirts and they pretend they can dance. It's not a big deal.
So you talked about the new locks. They have bagels with those locks?
That was his joke before he left.
Miss that. But Harmony had a situation where a gentleman didn't know that she spoke Spanish and sort of...
so you buried him, did you?
Sort of put him in his place.
Did you enjoy that? Yes,
Yeah,
you got perverse.
I have to admit.
Hey,
He called all of us gringos, and I get the term. I get that perhaps in his era or his age, it's like saying dearie and sweetie here, but it just set me. And I looked at him and I said in Spanish, I'm not going to buy anything in your shop. I'm going to go next door with the woman there and buy things from someone who does not call everyone gringos. And I said it to him in Spanish, and he looked at. There's a saying in Spanish. It's called "Las paredes oyen." The walls have ears, which is simply beware what you say, because
of course
other people may or may not understand or hear you. And he turned 4 shades of white. I went over next door, spent $20, and
see, I like this. He turned 4 shades of white.
Yeah, 4 shades of white, and that was that.
So he learned not to assume things.
Well, you might have taught him a lesson.
I hope.
You did.
You hope. You've done him a favor.
My dad was an interpreter, and he was a linguist during the Nuremberg trials. He spoke 12 languages.
Wow.
He said the hardest part when he was interpreting to a judge was to get the closest meaning for what the person actually said. Like in English, you could have good, better, best, all these different variations of almost the same, but not quite the same. And he loved to do what you did at restaurants and stuff. 'Cause he spoke strange languages like Chinese and different stuff. And he'd rattle it off and just shake them up.
Then after the three of us started doing these radio shows, and Greg, I remember, said, "How long do you think we're going to do these things, Joe?" I think "How long do you think we're going to have to do these things, Joe?" and Dan and I both figured a month or two.
Yeah.
We didn't think it was going to
One
be
contract.
Yeah, we didn't think.
I
And then
figured
here
a
it
few
is,
months at
15
most.
years later, and here, we're still doing. But we added, during the Great Recession, Miss Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, hardest working realtor, because so many people were misinformed about reality, that we needed to bring somebody in that understood what was happening in real estate.
We actually saw her about 10 years ago here.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
She called me yesterday. She had a very valid question on insurance about what do you do when you have an older home and it gets involved in a major, claim or a storm or something, and the county or the state says, well, you can't build it like it used to be. How does the insurance work for that? And I tried to explain to her that there's coverage called ordinance or law, which means if we have to replace it with better and newer stuff, we're under no obligation unless you have purchased that option.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah.
So the HO3 doesn't include that automatically?
No. We're only supposed to replace it like it was before the storm.
But it may not comply with
So
current
if the
law.
city or the county says, oh, you got to put upgraded windows, upgraded doors, all this, all that, that's out of your pocket unless you have taken that endorsement. And it's not expensive, but I have seen policies that don't have it.
So most of yours have that, I'm assuming.
Well, absolutely. We try to give them 25% of coverage A, and what that basically means is, let's say you insured your house for $200,000, you'd have $50,000 worth of upgrades in case you needed it. If you had 80 that you needed, you're on your own for another 30.
Yeah.
So you need to know how old your home is and how many things you have that are not up to date.
Then we added Mr. Mike Paulus, mortgage broker, and probably he was the most important person at that time because the media kept saying there was no mortgage money available, and that was never true. What they did, they went back to the old rules, which you had to prove you could make the payment, which is during the recession.
Don't you think that's a good rule?
I'm shocked.
I know, shocking. You think Californians believe that stuff? No. Anyway, so, and literally.
That's where it all started.
Isn't that the truth?
Well, don't you think that the federal government at that time, Joe, was trying to really push the idea of home ownership is a great thing and everyone should have it? And they did really push many of the lenders into making some foolish decisions because of what they were pushing.
Well, you say you blame it on the government. I blame it on greed, because what happened is they started packaging all of these mortgages as securities and selling them all over the world, and everybody in every other country said, "Hey, it's American real estate. We are really protected." So much for that. So that the collateralized mortgage obligations, nice legal term that kind of fell apart during the Great Recession. Did it not, Alan?
Yes, it did. They were called CMOs for short.
CMOs.
But Joe, you did have fraud in that. You did have people who were overinflating the values. You had lenders who were lending to what they thought was a proper appraisal, and it wasn't a proper appraisal, and when it went under, they got stuck with bad stuff.
Well, you might remember the official appraiser is called an MAI. That's the designation. Well, the joke was it's made as instructed. because what happened is, but then the lenders finally figured out during the Great Recession, hey, we can't have the realtor or the buyer or the seller ordering the appraisal. We, the lender, from now on are going to order the appraisal through a third party that they don't know. And it's not a bad rule. It does upset some of the people now because here they're going to appraise something in Port St. Lucie and the appraiser comes up from Fort Lauderdale. And it's a different neighborhood, different climate, different everything, but that's the rule. 340-1590, 340-1590. And speaking of a caller, we have Mike on the radio. Mike, welcome.
Hey, Joe. How are you? Great show today.
Obviously, we were just talking about you and what you educated and how much you educated the rest of us, and I didn't get to finish it because you called in and you interrupted me.
Hey, are you selling your boat? I saw where you're selling your boat, I thought.
I am selling the boat because I'm going to try to step up to a little bit larger one.
Well, you got a great
As
boat
I
there.
get older, I want a little bit more comfort.
Are you getting away from our local builder and going to go out of town?
No, actually, I'm thinking about, for the listeners that don't know, I have a Twin V, which is built very locally here in Fort Pierce.
Right, Fort Pierce is
Right.
a great boat.
But I think I'm going to step it up to a bit larger one because I'm just tired of getting beat up when the conditions aren't 100% in my favor.
You're going to get a Twin V, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
I'm
How
hooked
big-
on the catamaran.
how big do they make 'em?
I like the ride of the catamaran.
So they're gonna make one with a real cabin this time and a fly bridge?
No, I'm not a cabin person. I'm more of a fishing person.
I know, but
I don't
you-
need creature comfort.
How about
I
a
just want riding-
200-footer or
You
something?
do have a wife and daughters, I remember, and don't they beat you up on occasion when you don't have these comforts?
They just want a porta potty. That's all they want.
I know. That's the truth. You tell them, you hang over the side, and they get the knife out.
Joe!
I don't know. There's been a lot of sharks. I don't know if that's safe.
Anyway, what's new in the mortgage business other than the fact interest rates are still unbelievable?
Yeah, interest rates. I mean, I did a comparison between rates today and rates just as little as a year ago. And the interest rates are about 1.5% lower than they were this time last year.
Isn't that a miracle? I mean,
amazing.
really,
And,
no
you know,
logic.
it's
No logic.
amazing the difference that makes because for the average income, a person would qualify for about $75,000 more this year just because the interest rates are lower.
Yeah. Well, that's the ratio we started talking about where we went back to the old rules where you had to prove you could make the payment because they have a ratio income to debt. So, and how many times have
Yeah, but nowadays there's becoming more creative ways to verify income. Over the last few years, we went strictly by tax returns, and sometimes that's not an accurate way to verify like self-employed folks.
Oh, what else could I
they're
use? What else could I use, Mike?
bank deposits.
Bank deposits?
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we look at bank deposits, and for those who are, have decent credit and a good down payment, we would even take an accountant profit and loss statement.
So things, well, you know what happens, Mike, and you lived through this through multiple years where the pendulum swings one way and then it swings the other. We never want it to swing back as far as it did with the Great Recession, but the bottom line is people that can afford to make the payment, justifiably, they deserve to get a mortgage, and they're probably some of the best credit people going.
Correct. It's more, there's some more liberal ways to verify income nowadays, but they're using common sense when they make these loans.
Now,
They're
careful.
verifying
This
that
is
the funds
this.
that you're using for the down payment are actually yours.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, when you have skin in the game, then you're more likely to make those payments.
So let me ask you this: if I take all my drug dealing money and deposit it in the bank 1 month, and it shows that extra $100,000, does that help me get a mortgage?
No, you know that we have to
You mean a different type of house, Joe.
A different kind.
You be in the big house.
Be in the big house, right? Yeah, I was.
Welcome to your
You
new
know, that's
property
one
in
piece
Stark.
of advice I can give to all of our listeners is, everyone says that it's great to have cash and cash rules, but in the mortgage world, and probably in all the financial world, we don't like that.
No.
We don't know where that money came from. And if you plan on using cash, deposited in the bank, we can't use that as down payment.
You know what's interesting is that I know a bartender who lives on tips, and what she does, she accumulates $2,000 to $3,000 in deposits, and then goes in each time with those deposits, which can be once a month or once every few weeks, whatever. But there's a pattern for a long, long time where she's done this. And when she was applying for a mortgage, she had to jump through all kinds of hoops to explain that that was her money, and it wasn't illegal money.
Yeah, and for careers that deal in cash deposits, then we understand that. And as long as you have a pattern of depositing cash, and we're okay with that. That makes sense. If you're obviously a server, a bartender, a lot of people in the service industry have deposited a lot of cash.
Of course.
So as long as it's a normal routine, we understand that. It's when you have a deposit like for consecutively with your paycheck, and then all of a sudden you drop in $10,000 in cash.
Yeah.
That would present a problem for us because we need to verify where these funds come from and whether they're coming from legitimate sources.
You know, Dan and I and you, we do our continuing education courses, and we talk about this on occasion, but nothing is bigger in the tests that we have to take, and probably Greg from a legal standpoint, than money laundering.
Money laundering, absolutely.
They are constantly looking for illegal money. And then what we have to do as professionals, if we even have a hint that it's illegal or funny money, we have to report that.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like Congress money laundering?
Very similar.
They use cold cash. They put it in the freezer.
But Congress can get away with it.
The congressman in New Orleans puts it in the freezer.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hey, on another note, I do have to give hats off to Dan because Dan just was able to give me a great insurance policy because I had just put a brand new roof on the house.
Hey, it's what it
takes. And the insurance company sent out a inspector to the house, and he did find something that I wasn't aware of. I had a hose in one of the bathrooms that was about to go. And, they sent a notice to me, and I'm going to fix that. So, these inspections, they sometimes seem to be inconvenient, but they do. They're meant to save everybody money and aggravation.
Yep.
Well, they actually spend a tremendous amount of money on those types of claims when you have a washing machine hose, the discharge line go bad, or as you said, a toilet valve, or my daughter had a major claim when the line from the water source to her ice maker in her refrigerator, it ruptured while she was down visiting us.
Yeah.
It was about a $50,000 claim. So it can happen.
Jeez.
Hey, Miguel, thank you.
That saved me a lot of aggravation, and that's what I plan on doing tomorrow morning is replacing that hose. So thank you, Dan.
Hey, let me ask you a quick question now. Let's say you're thinking about getting a mortgage, but you're elderly. Let's say, and you're still working. You're in your late to mid 60s, or somebody like Joe,
kind of like Joe,
or like Joe, who's really old, and you know that you're not going to be working for 15 more years, but your mortgage is 15 or 30 years. How do they deal with that? How do they look at that?
Well, we cannot discriminate against you because of age. So if
I qualify at the time, regardless of my age,
I encourage you to take a 30-year loan because I guess you win.
I'm getting a 50-year loan.
No. You and I get 30-day loans.
30-day loans.
Don't let age discourage you from applying for a mortgage or a 30-year mortgage for that matter.
And that guy that loans us that money, he carries that club.
The key to this, Dan, is we don't expect most people to pay these loans off through regular amortization. The average length of time a loan stays on the books is 7 to 10 years.
That's a 7-year itch
they
talk
about. So if you take
about.
a 30-year loan, it doesn't matter. We anticipate that loan to be paid off within a 10-year period anyway.
Yeah, and the reality is people, whether they die or whatever, they sell the house, the heirs do, or they,
they sell the house, they refinance the house, they hit the lottery, or they get an inheritance, and they pay off the mortgage for one reason or another.
Right.
These loans are all typically paid off in about 10 years. Not all of them, but quite a few of them.
All right, my man, you coming to the 4 o'clock show?
Yeah, I plan to.
See, here's what I like about him. He lives 1 block away from the 4 o'clock show, but he's always working to come 4 o'clock.
Inevitably, when I'm ready to leave the office to go to the show,
I think
a customer that calls, and I just don't cut them short. I have to spend time with them.
What you need to do is talk to them as you're driving, and then you can talk to them on the air when we're at the show. You see?
Well, the problem
you
is
can't
I'm
do
not
that
a very
in-
good driver.
No.
So I don't think that's a good idea for me.
It's the law. We have a guest here that's from the great. I say the great state of Minnesota, but if you've ever been there, boy, I don't know why anybody's there. But that's okay. You can't talk and drive when you're in Minnesota?
No, but that doesn't stop anybody. But they've been doing.
Well, they're
they've
passing
really
the-
gotten a lot of tickets because of that, and they did pass the law. And I know as a pedestrian, I don't drive any longer. I take bus or train or
Right.
Uber.
cab or Uber or Lyft or whatever. But it's really helpful. But what happens is the sheriffs or the police, they find their parking place like they do down here.
Oh, yeah.
And
They catch you.
and they'll catch you because they'll come in from a higher, like a Jeep, and you're in a
Oh, yeah.
Toyota, and they can see what you're doing.
Well, you can do hands-free in some states, but you can't hold the phone in your hand.
Well, they'll allow hands-free.
Yeah.
And there's only one thing they said that you can
Text
use,
and
actually have
drive at the
a
same
phone
time.
in your hand, and that's if you were calling 911 for whatever emergency.
I call 911 constantly. Anyway, Mike,
Thanks, Mike.
thanks for calling in, my man.
Yeah, great show.
Thanks.
Now, you know that thing with cash that you were talking about? I have a brother-in-law who I dearly love him, but he had a hog parlor, which is a hog farm. And all of his little extra cash he made, he had a little thing down in the middle of one of these pig pens where he kept it.
I've heard this
Oh,
story.
yeah. So then he decided he was going to build a house. And he took this stinky money to the bank. And the bank knew what he did, because he goes, please never bring money like this to my bank again. Because it was awful.
But they took it.
They took it. They did.
They had to take it.
Because they knew that he wasn't doing anything illegal. He was just, he didn't
real
want to
money.
put it in the bank. He just wanted to hide it where no one would ever find
And
it.
boy, nobody
No
would have
one
found
did.
it. Yeah, dig us through that. 340-1590, 340-1590.
No home invasions there.
No.
No. Well, pigs, if they don't like you, they can be a little nasty, too.
Well, they can
So
eat you.
They
You
can.
got to be a little careful on that. But when they like you, I got a client up in Tennessee that's got a pet pig. And that, pet pigs, they don't stay small forever. And she's up to about 80 pounds now, but she thinks she's like a dog and wants to crawl up on the couch with you and lay on your lap, and it takes the wind out of you.
Well, there's big money in those. I actually had a guy approach me because he knows I used to work a lot with the local dairy farmers, and they are taking, the pig and the hog waste and the cow waste, and they're turning it into methane, and
Sure.
and actually almost being able to show a better return to the large dairies with that gas than they make on milk.
Hallelujah. Hey, listen,
Yeah.
I love that concept.
And that's because you have some states now that require green energy.
Yeah.
And this is going to be how they're going to get it, because it's green as you can get.
What's going to happen when the government quits subsidizing green energy?
Well, we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we're seeing that right now.
Yeah.
I've got an SC, not Sports Center, but a subject change. You a little bit surprised that the stock market is near record highs with all this impeachment? When Nixon was impeached and Clinton was impeached, the market went down dramatically during that time?
When everything shakes out, this is the information society where everything in the world that can be known is known immediately.
But Nixon and Clinton were presidents. This guy's an actor.
Well, wait a
If
minute.
you listen to the people on Capitol
What about
Hill.
Reagan?
What about Reagan?
He was
He
an
was
actor.
an actor.
No, he was a union president.
Oh.
And Trump wasn't an actor, he's a developer.
Actor-developer. Yes.
Actor developer.
He's a builder.
Well, the
He's a
whole
contractor.
thing to me is, the reality is our unemployment rate is at an all-time low, period. In fact, Martin County is down to 3.2%.
Joe, if you're not working, it means you don't want to work.
It means you don't want
You don't want
You
to
see ads up and down the street constantly now for help wanted.
Oh, yeah.
Every time you're on the highway in 95 and stuff, every trucker has got a sign on the back of the truck, come on, be a driver for us. Come on, be a driver for us.
I found my new career. It's a pizza place next to Publix in St. Lucie West, looking for drivers. That's it. I'm in.
Well, I guess you're not going to be hosting the shows anymore, right?
No, I'm going to be a driver.
Make
You're going to be a driver, make some money for
I'll
a
make
change.
more money.
Make more money.
Well, so when it all shakes out, Alan, when people talk to me about the market, because almost every time I do a meeting or a seminar, people will come up and say, Joe, when's a recession going to hit? And I'll say, well, one of the things that happens, there's usually something is a precursor that shows a recession coming, and one of them, something has to be overpriced, which we don't have housing overpriced today. We don't have the bond market in trouble. We don't show that. Secondly, unemployment rate starts to deteriorate. We don't have any of these signs. So there's always going to be this naysayer that says, hey, things are going to happen, and they will.
Eventually, he'll be right.
Yeah, everybody's right eventually. How long it's going to take, we don't know. Then the second thing is our government policies in defense of our guy running this country. He doesn't care that they're impeaching him. He just keeps working no matter what, doing what he's doing, and he just says, get out of the way. I'm just going to do it my way, whether you like it or not, and if you want to get rid of me, get rid of me. But that's just the way it is.
Doing what he's doing? What exactly is he doing?
I hate to tell you, but I think underneath that
chaos
exterior and that chaos and that unbelievable exaggeration is somebody on purpose doing all this stuff.
But he's been, all you have to do is go all the way back to the 70s and 80s.
Way back.
And that's the way he ran his construction company.
It's exactly the way he did it. He's
and
running.
He hasn't changed at all.
Everybody says it's exactly the way he did everything. The way he negotiates, everything he's doing, he's always done. And his argument against the old way is that didn't work. So let's just do it this way.
I don't need no State Department.
I don't need to
do it myself.
But he does have to remember that there is a big difference between manipulating and working within New York City as a developer or dealing with equal branches of government.
I don't think he agrees with that.
Well, I'm just trying to tell you that's been a wake-up call for him.
I don't think the Constitution agrees with it
The
either.
What?
The Constitution.
What Constitution? Yeah.
Exactly.
The key is...
And when you're talking about unemployment rate, when Barack Obama took over, it was 10%, right, or 10%. And it was 5 when he left, and now it's 3.5. So basically, it's the same trajectory. There's nothing that was dramatically changed when he took over.
Going through Republicans and Democrats for over 50 years, it's never been this low. So what happened, I don't care who wants to take credit for it. And when Bill Clinton was in, things were moving along at a magnificent pace. We had 4 or 5 great years. And, of course, the Republicans took credit for it because they came up with legislation. But guess what? Whoever's on the point is going to get the blame or the credit.
Right. It's
so
cyclical,
what you're saying,
and you can see the economy is starting to slow down. Manufacturing slowed down. The GDP dipped on.
However, unemployment
that's Obama's
is not.
fault. That's not Trump's
exactly.
fault.
Of course, it's Obama's fault. We all know that because it had to slow down, right?
Yes, it had to, and it's going to.
Anyway,
I just blame Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah,
that's my. Hey, that is my candidate.
Hillary is doing her one big favor. Man, Megan, lambasting her. Now she has become a household name almost overnight. Didn't cost her a nickel.
But did you hear what Trump said?
No.
She'd make a great vice president.
Yes,
and I'm sitting there. If I was Mike Pence, I'm going,
Listen, we don't know where we're going exactly,
Trump
but the journey is
that because of her looks.
340.
He's got a good-looking wife, so he ought to know.
340-1590. 340-1590.
His Russian mail-order bride.
The Russian mail-order bride.
How much time we got left there, Chief?
About
plenty of time.
4 hours.
Okay, good. Hey, Greg, since I've been back from this trip, wouldn't you know it, 2 times wills and trusts have come up. Mm-hmm. Now, the things that we take for granted constantly, that we don't talk enough about on here, is the difference between a will and a trust. And I've had this brought up because people read these ads in the newspaper and they go to these seminars, and some of your competitors sell trusts like crazy and get people into trust and charge them a lot of money whether they need it or not. So, I try to explain to people TOD, transfer on death agreements, and that IRAs and retirement accounts are not subject to that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I had a circumstance that after we talked to the other Mike on the radio, I want to bring up for another reason for a trust.
Okay.
340-1590. Mike, Joe Martek, you're on the radio.
Hey, how's everybody?
Doing good, Mike. How about you?
Doing well. I was calling just a couple of quick points. first, I do believe that the impeachment will never move forward. They'll never turn it over to the Senate. What they're trying to do is create people like Romney who are going to approach Trump and try to force him to resign, which is how they got rid of Nixon. And Nixon really never went out because of impeachment. He was convinced he had to resign.
He had to resign, right.
And that's what they're trying to do. And now they got Romney on their team. That guy must be crazy.
No, I think you're right. I think there are cracks showing. Even Mitch McConnell is starting to say some things. So I think you're starting to see that.
I'd like to see President Trump offer Tulsi Gabbard a place in his cabinet. I think she could really fit in well with him.
Let me just tell you something.
He's talked about her today.
Let's tell you, as long as she keeps fighting with Hillary, she's looking better every day because all this. Look at, she just got about $10 million worth of advertising for free.
Exactly.
She became a household. Nobody even knew who she was a month ago. Now she's a household name. So
she's a formidable adversary. She dispatched that Kamala Harris in the first debate.
Yep.
She's nowhere now.
Yep. Hey, you know, the politics, Mike. It's always an interesting topic, and of course we never talk about it here. But
what I'm calling out with a question today, when I was running the labor hall, daily work, daily pay. For about a year, I would take workers down every couple days to assist a demolition crew taking out houses along the West Virginia corridor. And so I wonder what becomes of those people. Are they let a house get set in motion that they can move immediately into, or do they have to go with the time-consuming, tedious task of house hunting? Can they move out of state? Are they just given money? I wondered if you could enlighten us all about how.
Well, Mike, that would depend on the house and who owned. If it was owner occupied, if it was a rental, all those are different case scenarios. I did have a friend, so I can speak on the subject a little. I had a friend, and they owned and lived in a house on West Virginia. And when they decided to put in the Crosstown Parkway and they bought up all those houses for the expansion, they basically purchased their home. They thanked them for the money, and they moved and bought another house. If you were living in a rental's house, and I know for a long time, even after they had purchased those homes from the owners, you had some people living there who were tenants who were living in those homes, and I'm sure they were displaced once they said, "Hey, time's up, you got to go." But they didn't knock on the door the day before and said, "Get out." They had plenty of time to know to get out.
Yep.
There were some nice houses along there, and I could tell once they'd been vacated because it would start looking kind of forlornly. And then one day we'd get the call, and it was that house's time. And boy, they'd knock them flat. Took a couple days.
And some of them got moved, Mike. I have a friend over at Browning, and as you may have seen from time to time, some of those houses were jack and board up and moved to another location.
Wow, that's amazing. I never knew that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
it's amazing how they can take a cement slab house and raise it up in the air and put a truck underneath it and move it. Just amazing.
I saw a Burger King that used to be in front of the mall in Jensen Beach. Put on the proper size truck and trailer and moved to White City down US 1.
Yeah.
Right down US 1?
Right down US 1.
Yeah.
Cool. I bet the people
Oh, it was
didn't
great.
like
We lined up
traffic
like a
were
parade.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I watched
So
them.
is that cheaper than building?
It had to be. They
Evidently it
wouldn't.
was.
Yeah. The other side of the coin, I like when they come along because they have power lines and they have to lift the
They
power
had to
lines.
lift the
and go
power
underneath
lines.
them.
They had to
It's
do
quite
all that stuff.
like it's like a parade. It really is because you know.
Oh, I can't imagine. But they must have done a fine job on that new bridge. My friends are telling me what an amazing experience it is to go over the new bridge.
I actually drove over it.
I just don't like the Floresta
I don't either.
roundabout. I don't care
think
for
that's
that.
crazy.
That's a crazy roundabout at
Fine,
Floresta.
yes.
But they got the weird like these.
If you're from Michigan, you get that.
I like roundabouts.
This
personally.
isn't a real roundabout. This
No,
is
it's not a roundabout, but they have a
think
lot
it's
of
dangerous.
intersections like that in Michigan.
Well, in Michigan, there's almost no left turns anyplace. You have to go up and make a U-turn through and come back.
That's it.
But that's exactly the concept, and that's Telegraph Road, main drags in Michigan for years and years and years. Yeah. Hey,
Well, thank you for all that information. I have wondered about the concept of eminent domain. Thank you.
now you know. Hey, Mike, good talking to you, my man.
And root
Okay,
for
have a good
President
week.
Tulsi Gabbard, by the
Kelsey Gabbard, right?
I would vote for her.
way. I would too.
We all would.
In a heartbeat.
340-1590, 340-1590. So anyway, back to talking wills and trusts. Why do people get a trust? I got this young man. First thing he does, he's an independent, got a trucking business, got his own truck and runs his truck. And he's got an LLC. And I said, well, why'd you get the LLC? He says, I don't know. Somebody said it's a good idea. And I said, okay. I said, he asked me questions like, doesn't that protect me from lawsuits? And I said, not really. He said, well, then why do I have it? And I says, well, somebody probably talked you into it and thought it was a good idea. It just causes a little bit more paperwork, but it's not a bad problem. It's not a good, it's just
not a
what it is.
bad problem, no.
No. But then the next question was, he said, listen, I got this house I own, and I want to keep it in the family after I die. How do I do that? And I said, now all of a sudden a trust starts to look important, because a will, I don't care what you say, what happens, your executor when the will says, hey, I don't care what Dad said, we're selling it and splitting the money, but the trust says it has to stay for a period of time, and has to be this, has to be that, and the successor trustees have to follow according to the rules, unless the attorney that drafted the trust gives them a wiggle room.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he means stay in the family. Just to his children?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's...
You would devise him
basically
against it,
homestead.
but what if he wanted to do that?
You can do that up to a certain point. You could do it for a generation. You can't do it
forever.
Forever.
Well, that's
no.
what I said. When I was talking to him, I says, you know, you have to have a clock on that. Maybe you say for 10 years, 20 years, you have to have a number. Or, Greg, you would say it for a generation, because what if nobody has children? Then all of a sudden, who gets the house? Well, there's no blood anymore, no family. So there has to be an escape valve in there.
Yeah, if he's just looking to make sure it passes to his children, that's not a problem.
But he wants his mother, and he owned this house, and it's just like an old country type thing. And he wants that house, his mom wants that house to stay in the family, because they planted all these fruit trees in the yard, and now they're producing fruit, and they don't want that fruit to go to anybody else.
Well, you can't rule from the grave, you know. He whatever he wants, he's going to be gone. So.
Well, but he can put some restrictions for a period of time, can he not, in the trust?
Could he not
for
just
a period
sell
of time
to them?
Well, yeah, but selling it, he's dead now. What he's saying is, I'm dead, and now if the house is in the trust.
What if I sold it, and they deeded it back to me in a life estate, and then upon my death it revert back to the owner? I have seen many people who are elderly, who have their widow and a widower, and they love each other, but they don't want to get married.
Yeah.
And so they say, hey, listen,
Life estate.
If I die, I don't want my kids to kick you out. You get to stay in it until you die, and then it goes to my kids.
That isn't what
things you can do.
I've never heard of that.
Oh,
Life
yeah.
estate.
Big time. Big time.
Really?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Life estate can be a great thing. I mean, but in certain situations.
I had one that husband and wife, second marriage. He was a bit younger than her, and it was her money, her house. And basically, in her trust, I'm paraphrasing now, but she said if she died before him, he could stay there until he died, as long as he didn't move a bimbo in.
But what does that mean?
And I am not
bimbo?
kidding. I am not kidding.
Come on, Joe.
No.
That's not all that uncommon.
What if you
No,
brought
you
in
can- you
what if
honestly-
you brought in a bimbette, not a
bimbette
bimbo?
is okay, but when it
that's
didn't
not
say.
uncommon.
Listen, it didn't say bimbo, but it might as well have. You use a nicer word.
It's not uncommon. It's a concern. Okay, so I want to give my partner this home a place to live,
Yeah.
so they don't get kicked out.
However,
at least, but I want it eventually to go to my kids.
Right.
But they don't want that person, whether it be a man or a woman, to cohabitate with a.
Well, I
another.
don't think she minded if another man moved in, but
Well,
he was a handsome
wouldn't.
devil,
No,
and
but
he was like 10 years younger than her. And she says, I know the minute I'm gone, within 8 seconds, he's going to have that bimbo. And boy, she was pretty adamant about that. And he just sat there grinning and didn't say a word, you know.
And don't think the kids won't be watching.
The kids, hey, it's their money sitting there, right, with somebody else holding their money, of course. But what I'm trying to say is, I think almost any circumstance you want as the grantor, the owner of this trust, you can accomplish within certain limits, because you can't have things forever.
Yeah.
You got to have starts and ends.
That's true. That's true. It gives you more flexibility.
Yep. The other side of the coin was, and we started talking, and I've had this brought up even by people that are relatively sophisticated. They think because they form a corporation or an LLC that they are protected from lawsuits.
No.
And I said,
well, you know, that's basically it's a separate entity, but if you're creating that entity just to avoid lawsuits,
They can pierce the veil.
in a heartbeat. And if you're a sole proprietor or you got 1 or 2 employees, but all of a sudden if you're a public company, publicly traded, it's a different animal.
You don't do the corporate, you know, there's procedures that you have to do when you have a corporation with the meetings and minutes and all that sort of thing, and they don't do that. It's pretty easy to pierce that veil.
Of course. Well, you know, you can do all those minutes and meetings in about an hour for 5 years.
And I know it's,
you know what I'm talking
it's done
about.
that way, yeah.
Fake the dates. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it takes, you know, I had a IRS audit, and they want to have, you know, your book for every minute that you're alive every day, and you've got to go do it. So I looked at the auditor, or the person at the IRS, and I said, okay, I'll go home and make one up. And she goes, what? And I said, I'll go home and get it.
Do you guys ever write down your mileage? I used to do that.
We were supposed to every
Yeah,
day.
you used to have to.
But
Well, here's what I do. I have a big calendar on my desk right now. Everywhere I go that day, I wrote right where I go.
you don't have the mileage.
Do you
But
really?
but I don't have the mileage. Like it'll have everything I'm going to do, all my appointments. It's all right there. Even though I have it on my computer, I have it. And then at the end of the month, when I do my end of the month statement, I fold it up, shove it in that envelope, and it's good for the month.
I save to do exactly the same thing. However, I don't do mileage. My company owns the car. So every expense is the company's. It's not mine.
No personal mileage, Joseph.
Oh, I have to. My accountant argues with me every year about how much personal mileage.
I would say 80% of your safe.
And that's what he says.
80%.
80% you can take of all the total expenses.
That's what I do.
Yeah. So I said, well, I need to buy 2 more cars so I have more 80%ers.
I have 4.
Well, Dan also has a car business, so he has a way around that one a little bit too.
Joe, I haven't been here for 4 weeks, and I'd like to give our dear friend a shout out. Robert, hopefully he's recovering well. Robert
You talking
is a
Bulldog?
Yep, Bulldog. Bulldog is a veteran who wants to help other veterans, and he loves to get emails from veterans who need assistance, and Bulldog is trying to specialize in leading the veterans to where they need to go, to who to talk to, what to do.
What's his website?
So his email, it's not a website, it's his email. It's Robert Buys, BUYS 1004 at Comcast.net.
Speaking of Bulldog, have you talked to him since you've been back?
No, I have not.
You're going to have to reach out because, he was 35 pounds lighter last time we talked to him.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and he's not a big guy to start with. So, hey, listen, there's no such thing as a good cancer. He's fighting the battle, and, he's a tough guy, but guess what? That and 50 cents sometimes gets a third of a cup of coffee. So prayers we give him and hope for him. Good man. 340-1590, 340-1590. So anyway, Greg, I want my house to stay in the family. Mm-hmm. What could you do? Maybe 20 years, 30 years? Would you phrase it? Generation?
Like a generation, yeah.
Make for one generation?
So basically, if your family gets along, you got a pretty good shot at that working.
Yeah.
But if your family doesn't get along, you probably don't.
Well, eventually the family
true?
won't get along. I mean, there's no such thing as a family that forever and ever gets along.
But how do these people have their ancestral homes that have been in their family for hundreds of years? How does that happen?
They all had to live there because they didn't have any money.
Well, and they could want to. I mean, they want to continue living.
Think
there.
1,000 years ago, where we didn't have 2-car
alive
families
then,
and
Joe.
3-car families, and we didn't have Saturday night movies and stuff. Families oftentimes subsisted for generations on the homestead.
Right.
And they were on the North End in Boston. To this day, we got the 3-story houses where the kids move upstairs. And if you go to Italy, all these villages have these 3-story houses where the kids move upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. 340-1590, 340-1590. 2 minutes left. You know, we're trying to teach Pastor Dave on WCNO, our 4 o'clock show, how to do this. He's got flashcards, like you have when you're in kindergarten. It's got 5 minutes, 4 minutes.
Able to read
He's a
them,
religious
Joe?
guy,
Can you
right?
read
Religious
them,
guy,
Joe?
right?
That makes sense.
That makes sense. I'm trying to teach him your sign language. He's having a hard problem.
He's
with
got the 1 minute down real well.
Yeah.
We're number one.
We're number one. Back again. Back in '04, we started doing these radio shows with Greg Fasula, attorney, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, Joe Martek, financial advisor. And over the years, we've added Miss Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, hardest working realtor known made to man, maybe the hardest working person. And then Mike Paulus, who called in. And, you know, I still to this day get a kick out of it. Way back then, when the heart of the recession, when there was no money, there was still 100% financing with the USDA program. There was still 100% financing with the VA program, and there was still FHA financing. And none of those rules have really changed dramatically, but the consumer was being told by the media that this stuff wasn't there. So thank you,
That was
Mike.
a little manipulation.
No kidding. Hey, would you say the media is biased on occasion?
You say fake news?
Fake news, you know? Hey, we're sitting here with a guy from California. We know about fake news. So 340-15.
Yeah, and I worked at Fox, too.
There you go. Hey, guys, 30 seconds. Give us some parting words there, attorney.
Well, I will, just to say to everybody that what you hear in the news is not always the truth, but what you don't hear in the news probably is the truth.
Hey, that's called philosophy. I love it. Hey, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you, Mike and Mike, for calling in. And until next week, adios.
So did you guys went on the
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.